Nice to see you. We are recording this meeting for our friends who are unable to join us. Nice to see you, Beverly. We'll let people join for about 10 more seconds before we go ahead and dive in. Happy April, everyone. I hope that you guys all enjoyed a spring break. We are happy that you are taking your time to be here with us this morning. On the call with me is Trish Dunn and Sonia Malik. We are lucky enough to have our dear friend, Dr. Allison Fox Resnick here, who will walk us through some learning here after we engage in the welcome. Our agenda is the same. We are going to reflect on the previous month through our reflection routine. We'll get to think really hard about teacher learning. And then at the end, we'll have some updates and next steps for you all between this meeting and our next, which is on May 7th. On the screen now is a bit.ly and QR code. I'm sure that one of my friends will put those in chat for me. If you wouldn't mind taking a second and providing us with some data on a reflection of how the past month has gone for you all in your leadership roles, that would be epic. After you fill out that reflection routine, we will cascade fill into breakouts. We'll keep it to about 3 people per breakout. You'll click on the bottom 3 waffle icon of your screen where it says breakout. You can go ahead and click in there with a friend. And if you're just joining us, we're just getting started on the reflection routine. Let us know how your month has been going. We'll cascade fill into breakouts. And we've had a few friends join us, so I'll say it one more time. Right now, we are engaging in the reflection routine. So click on that bit.ly or scan the QR code here. After you take the time to fill out the form, head to a breakout room, chat with some friends. How's it going? What is your professional learning plan looking like for the 2026-2027 school year? Could be a possible conversation starter. Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for taking some intentional time to reflect on the previous month and chat with some friends in breakout rooms. Our purpose is on the screen. We're here to learn together, network, and continue to collaborate around the 2025-2026 early math system. Our learning this year has been represented in what the early math team has been calling a fan. We have lived into each 4 of these areas. And throughout that learning, we've learned that teacher learning is really, really complex and it happens over time. We've played around with that in learning trajectories, knowing, doing, and becoming, and trying to craft for coherence. Today, in our leadership practice and crafting learning systems, we are going to think about goals for next year and how our systems can support them. And with that, I'm going to kick it to our friend Allison, who is going to walk us through our next portion.
Can I share my screen?
You sure can.
Uh, okay. So, good morning, everyone. It's so good to see you all. I just want to call out one difference in what we're doing today. Often this whole year, we've been starting in that purple section with the math teaching and learning. We've done some math together. Today, we'll skip that part. We've done a lot of thinking about what it means for teachers to engage students in really rich discussions where kids are oriented towards each other's ideas and engaging with each other's reasoning. We're going to think together about how the teacher learning for that unfolds along messy and unique trajectories. We're going to kind of pull together what we've done the last few months. And then we're going to think about how can we think about a goal for next year and how grounding ourselves in the trajectory can help us design our systems to support that gradual, messy movement along the trajectory towards that goal. So let's start, as we often do, by just sitting with the shifts that we've been thinking about together in terms of what it means to lead and learn as educators. And the piece we've been zooming in on most in the last couple of months is what does it mean to be a student of our students? If in this case, our students are our teachers. And what we're going to dive into today is we're going to pull together a few pieces of what we've been doing to put forward a new routine for us to think about. So these are the full 6 steps of the routine. What you'll notice is steps 1 and 2 are actually just bringing forward other routines we have around unpacking messy trajectories and thinking about the knowing and doing and becoming layers of really complex learning. We're going to use those 2 activities, those 2 routines, to then build off of them to think about where are our teachers, how does that help us identify a goal, and how can we think about designing our system to support that gradual, messy learning towards that goal. So this is our work today. What we're going to do is experience the routine, play with it. I really want you to notice how this is, I think, something that you could use with your teams for any goal you have with teachers. These are a series of steps and conversations you could have together to really help yourselves hone in on what it is you're trying to support your teachers with and what really intentional designs in your learning system could help that learning. So let's dive in. We've been sitting in this step 1 really for the last 3 months. We've been thinking about, oops, these animations were backwards. We've been unpacking the trajectory 1 step at a time. So in January, we thought about what resistance might look like or sound like as teachers are learning to lead discussions in their classrooms. In February, we thought about compliance. And in March, we thought about internalization. One step that we took that, I'll be honest, I had never broken down the activity in this way before. And I think hopefully you experience it as powerful. I thought it was powerful. We really thought about what are the potential underlying reasons, not just what could it look like or sound like, but what reasons might be underneath that for teachers. So that's what we did the last 3 months. What I played with this week, and I want to emphasize the word draft. Let's think about how this could be more useful, and you'll have a chance to really process this over the next 10 minutes here. I tried to pull it all together. So what you'll see is up at the top up here is what could resistance, compliance, or internalization look like. These are our collective ideas I pulled from our brainstorming and notes from the last 3 months. And then underneath this dotted line are our ideas about the kinds of underlying reasons, the knowledge or beliefs about students, math, learning, teaching, school, self, that could be underlying the things we're seeing with teachers. So let's go through a few different steps for processing this. The first thing I just want you to take a moment to do is think about, what do you notice and what do you wonder? And maybe, team, if you could put the link to the slides in the chat in case people want to zoom in. I realize this could be small on people's screens. Thank you, Sonia. So Sonia put the link in the chat if you'd like to pull it up for yourselves. We will all be in there in a moment anyways, so you could go ahead and click in. Just what do you notice about our thinking when it's pulled all together across these different phases of the trajectory? And you can unmute or you can put a thought in the chat. Just first noticings or wonderings.
One thing I notice is the statement at the bottom underneath resistance and compliance. That's making connections between the reasons for resistance and compliance and that they're often the same.
Yes, and I'll name, and if people have ideas of how to capture this better. It was tricky for me because the way it ends up looking is like that these happen first over here and then you might move towards these ones. That is not how it works. These are a bunch of different reasons you could be in resistance or compliance. These are not necessarily like you move from here over to here. So that is a tricky thing about trying to represent this. But I think that was one of our big ahas, Trish, what over the last 3 months was, oh, these reasons could be the same. It's, am I trying it or not, is the difference between resistance and compliance. And I noticed in the chat, John, you were thinking about how these can change from day to day and minute to minute. I think that's such an important point, right? The reason I might be in compliance or resistance could be different based on what it is I'm expected to try, how I'm feeling, what the other things on my plate are. Really important point. So I'll just name, if you were doing this with in your context, oops. Wait, I zoomed forward a lot here. That was not what's supposed to happen. Okay. If you're doing in this context, you could put forward, you could have with your team, you could have this compilation of our ideas from Systems Leader Network that you all process together. You could also have spent the time to unpack these phases of the trajectory together. So there's different ways you could enter into this. The point is we want to really sit with what could messy learning look like over time. So now what I want you to do with me is, if you can join me in the slides, the link was in the chat, but I'll drop it in one more time. And yes, Lori, I agree. There's a big shift in expectations for students too. Is something really interesting to think about, that students are also having to move along their own trajectory as teachers are moving along their trajectory, right? Here's what I'd love to do right now. Let's layer on our lens of knowing, doing, and becoming. So if you join me in the slides, oh gosh. If you join me in the slides, I put all these dots over here. My thinking is, let's pretend they're dot stickers, and you can go ahead and copy and paste them And let's just gut reaction. Where do you see elements of knowing, doing, or becoming? And I can also just make some more so that you can just drag them. Just drop them over here. Gut reaction, don't worry about being right or wrong. Like, where do you see layers of knowing, doing, or becoming over on our trajectory? And we are a small group today, so I'm going to encourage you, please jump in with questions or thoughts. Just unmute and let's have a conversation today. Anything that lens on this brought up for people, or what you're noticing about the dots?
Oopsie.
All the colors, all the places, says Jenny. Trish is noticing, oh gosh, lots of yellow, more yellow over on the internalization piece. Yeah, lots of becoming with the underlying reasons for internalization. What's interesting is there's lots of becoming over here too, right? We always have an identity in terms of who we are as a teacher. It's that we're supporting some shifts in that identity to happen. And that's the becoming piece, right? What do I think my job is? If I think my job is to move really fast and get kids to know things really quickly, then this makes sense to me that having kids talk to each other is going to take way too much time. If I think my job is to deliver information, then it would make sense that I don't think my kids don't have enough ideas or strategies already to bring to the table, right? So there's always becoming across here. It's what are we trying to support people to become into is where we see this moving along the trajectory.
I've noticed the dots have kind of shifted away from the resistance a little bit and leaning to the right a bit more.
Mm-hmm. So this comment about dots, all the colors, all the places, as Jenny said. Sometimes people, when we're first making sense of knowing, doing, becoming, I've realized that sometimes we think about it as linear, like first you know, then you do, then you become. Beverly, I see you shaking your head. What thought just happened in your head?
Well, it's like perception, right? It's like when you're saying things like my kids won't be able to do that or I don't have time, like it's I don't know. It's not necessarily like you said, it's not a linear thing. It's like what you're thinking of and what your perception is of how your day is going to go or how your students are going to react.
Yes. And what we see here is that actually there's knowing and doing, becoming all mixed up together, right? So the learning happens at the intersection of those in a really messy way. It's not first I know, then I do, then I become. It's all mixed together that I have to do all three in different ways over time if I'm going to move along the trajectory. And these dots really show that to us, right? All right, so that's one way that I think this kind of trajectory tool could be really useful for us, is layering on our lens of knowing, doing, and becoming, to see like, how do we really make sense of the complexity of learning that we're trying to support our teachers with? Okay, if you move with me to slide 13. So the next step in this routine is to use this tool to think about, where are our teachers? So in your context, what I would encourage you to do, and you could do this later if you want, is to think about a whole group of teachers. So that could mean different things. If you're working with one grade team, you want to really think about, where would I think about this grade team being right now? If you're thinking about a whole school, super interesting to put a whole school's worth of teachers on this trajectory to help you think about where your teachers are right now. And I want to emphasize that we do not want to fall into labeling teachers, just like we don't want to fall into labeling kids, right? But thinking about, where are my teachers right now based on what I've seen in this particular goal that I have for them is a really powerful way to then zoom in on how we might support them, okay? Today, just for our collective learning, we're just going to each think about 2 teachers. So first, I want you to think about, on slide 14, if you meet me there. First, just think about a teacher in your context, or a teacher you've worked with before at some point, who was in resistance in relation to this goal of facilitating discussions. So you're holding this teacher in your head. Now I want you to drag a dot or multiple dots to, what do you think the underlying reasons were for their resistance? You could have one reason, you could have multiple reasons. What would you say their underlying reasons for resistance were? Just focus on this one teacher in your head right now. Why do you think they were in resistance, or are in resistance currently? What are we noticing?
There seems to be a pretty strong belief that if they don't know the facts, if they don't have that background knowledge, they won't be able to have conversations. There's a lot of dots around that.
Okay, so we're noticing some clusters of dots. Trish is noticing there's so many reasons for resistance, right? It's not that all teachers are resisting for the same reason. That is crucial for us to sit with. And then Jenny's noticing there's actually multiple reasons for one teacher. Another really important thing to think about. So here's the trap we can fall into. We can say these 10 teachers aren't doing it I'm going to have the same intervention or supports for them. Why doesn't that work?
Can you repeat that question? Was it that why don't you use the same thing for another
Absolutely.
teacher? Is that what you?
Yeah, so sometimes what we do, the trap we do is say like, well, this whole group of teachers is not doing X. So they're all in resistance. So we're going to provide this same uniform support to all of them. Right? And what Jenny's pointing out in the chat is like there's different underlying reasons. So there's some to the point that was made around like there's actually like quite a few teachers maybe that are stuck in this like, well, they have to do the facts before. Okay, maybe I might have a similar support designed to support those teachers to kind of move out of that. What if they could learn the facts while they're also doing discussions, right? What could I do to nudge them into that space? But also, if we just think that all teachers are resisting for the same reason, we're not going to actually support any of them to move along the trajectory because likely as we're seeing, they're all coming at it from different reasons, right? So one size doesn't fit all, as Angela is saying. Yep. And just like we can't help children with the exact same support, teachers need different supports, right? But if we connect to kids, like the power of, say, the CGI trajectories is it helps us see where exactly are kids with their thinking, which helps us think about really intentionally designing that next step for them. This trajectory has the same power for us with teachers. If we can really understand the underlying reason for why they are where they are, we can design a much more powerful response and support system for them to move along the trajectory. Okay, let's try this one more time. I want you to think about a different teacher now. This time it's one who's in compliance. So remember, compliance is I'm doing it, but just because you told me to do it. I'm doing it in a pretty scripted way. I'm doing it in a really inflexible way. I don't believe in it. I'm just doing it because you told me to. So again, think about one teacher in your head that you've worked with who was in compliance around leading math discussions. And what would you say some of their underlying reasons were? Is this bringing up for people? Yeah, so in the chat, maybe this is highlighting that they're not understanding the why, right? The why underneath this yet, right? So now that they're doing it, how do we support them to see the why and see the impact, right? But this is such an example of why compliance is actually a celebration. If you are trying it, then I can help you see how powerful it is and understand the why. If you're not trying it, I can't do that for you, right? So there we see the shift in what our goal is and what we're trying to support teachers with is if we can get them to just try it, then we can start to design supports to help them over time. It's not going to happen like this in one event, right? Over time, start to see the power of engaging kids in learning like this. Yeah, and Beverly's noticing there's still so many variety of reasons, right? So again, digging underneath to not, oh, we have 10 teachers in compliance, that actually does not help me understand what's happening for my learners. Digging deeper, and this is I want to emphasize these are just some of the potential underlying reasons that we brainstormed over the last few months. There's so many other ones, right? So we don't have to feel locked into these, but these are a useful way to start nudging us to think about the range of different reasons why a teacher might be just in compliance. Yep. And Sonia, I love that you're thinking about this point we were talking about last month, actually, that there's such a emphasis in our system, actually, that teachers should be compliant. That's what it means to be a good teacher, is to be compliant and be in the right place on the pacing guide and do the things you're supposed to do. That's often what we're like sending the message that that's what good teaching means. So there's a lot of work there to think about what does it mean to design our system to support them to think about, actually, I could be flexible and agentic within my enactment of the discussion, and I could see it really powerful as a powerful way to support kids' learning. Yeah, and Stacy, that's a really interesting point, right? Teachers might be feeling these things, but they're not always saying it. These are not things often that teachers are going to say out loud. We have to look for the subtle hints, right? And that's where the relationships with them and paying attention to the different ways that they're interacting or the smaller comments that they're making help us kind of piece it together of, oh, they're worried about feeling like a bad teacher if the kids don't know the right answer right away, right? I'm picking up on that based on all the little comments they've made over the last few weeks. That's where we can start placing these kids. Like most teachers are not going to say these exact statements out loud, although some of them might. Any other wonderings about this? Okay. We're actually going to take a moment to just process in small groups. So on slide 16, you'll see the instructions here. It's actually wrong. These numbers are wrong now. Let's see. It's slides 12 through 15. We're going to jump into trios and just spend a few minutes looking back at slides 12 through 15 and just take a moment to process together. What do you notice? What do you wonder? What does this, I want to emphasize this is a draft tool, help us see what could make it more useful for you. I would be so interested to let's design this together and think about what tweaks we would make or whole revisions we would make to make this a more useful tool. Okay, so let's jump into breakouts. Yes.
How many minutes, Allison?
We'll do 7 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rooms are open.
See where we're at.
I see a couple other people thinking about the teacher's piece. Megan, your question is super important. Wondering how to really know what the root cause is for resistance or compliance rather than just making assumptions. So important. So a way to think about this would be like, what's my hypothesis? Right? And then you're kind of listening to what teachers say, watching what they're doing. As was raised earlier, it's going to change also. So what it is for this unit might be different from the last unit because I am real scared of fractions, but I was okay with addition and subtraction, right? Like it's going to change. And that's part of being a student of our students, is paying such close attention to the underlying thinking that's happening for teachers rather than just the surface level of what we're seeing. So important. And again, that also connects to me about not labeling teachers. So we're not going to say, these are my compliance teachers. That is not useful. This is, how can this help me think about what's going on for my learners so I can design more responsive learning for them? That's the whole point of this, right? Yeah, and that's exactly what I see Carrie saying, right? Like this is exactly what we're trying to support teachers to do, not just plow through to the next lesson in the exact way it's scripted, but say, based on what I'm noticing about my kids' thinking, what am I going to do tomorrow to really like respond to that exact set of thinking I'm noticing right now in this moment, which is going to be different than next week, right? Other things folks want to lift up either in the chat or...
One of the things that I thought was really interesting that Stacy talked about in our conversation was that last year, the conversations and the meetings and things that she had with teachers were pretty just surface. They weren't necessarily like really internalizing or sharing kind of where they were at, but that has shifted this year. And Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong or I'm not saying this the right way, but she was just talking about how the conversations are richer. They're sharing all the things, their challenges, they're not afraid to just put it all out there so that they can get better. And so this work, I think, just like in our classroom, our mathematical classroom with kids, we have to create a culture that allows for people to do this professional learning in this way. And that takes time. We can't just say, hey, we're shifting everything because we've gone to this training with Allison Fox Resnick and she says we should do this. Like that doesn't just happen. We have to grow that then in our spaces. And clearly, as Stacy was talking, I was like, oh my gosh, her culture has really shifted in her space to be able to continue this work.
That's such a beautiful point. And I love the connection to kids, right? We actually often in the first moments of trying to teach math in a way that centers kids' ideas have a hard time getting kids to share their ideas. Or they don't want to write down their messy thinking because in the past they've only been given a yes or no on their final answer, right? So they don't want to share the messiness of their thinking, either verbally or on their paper. It's the same with teachers. If they've been in a culture where it's not okay to share your messy thinking or your questions or what's feeling hard, then we don't have access to their underlying reasons, right? So we have to pay attention to tiny hints at first, and then in Stacy's example, build the culture where we can start having more access to what's going on for teachers in their thinking and their messy learning processes. That's such a great example. I think it's actually a beautiful pivot also. Well, and I guess what also just surfaced was exactly the big point that I was hoping to land here. So we got there. Being a student of your students. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. It's not very useful. Okay. Being a student of your students means, as we were just talking about, paying close attention and making sense of not just what they're doing or not doing yet, but also the real diversity and the constant changing in their underlying reasons for what they're doing, right? And this is essential because these different underlying reasons require us to cobble together in a responsive way over time to craft the system to support them based on where they are in any given moment, right? So that's what's really, really hard about our work. That's what it means to be a student of our students, is really digging in to learn about where they are. So we're going to move on to these we just finished step 3, right? We did these 3 steps here. We thought about what the messy trajectory could look like. We layered on knowing, doing, becoming. While you were in breakouts, Trish, Sonia, and Jess and I were realizing that there's a pivot we made here that we've never done before. I've never done it before either, where we layered knowing, doing, and becoming onto the trajectory. Usually our order has been, what's the knowing, doing, becoming? Okay, what could the trajectory look like? Might be interesting just to think about. I think both orders are useful. What did each order or combination of these different lenses that we bring to our work, what new things did it help us with? So all of that is leading up to these last 3 steps, which is thinking about a goal or shift we want to support and thinking about how to support our system towards that. So here what we're gonna do is move over to our collective workspace. So I'll put the link in the chat. And what you see at the top here is this is our list from last time, actually. We started naming some big overarching shifts we're trying to support for our teachers. So as a first step, what I would love you to do is just take a look at these, and then what else, based on our conversation today, would you add? What are some other shifts we're trying to support for our teachers as they're moving along this trajectory? Okay, these are so rich. And what I just want to call your attention to is often the way historically we've talked about teacher learning goals is like, we're going to have them do more discussion. Framing our goals for teachers, like we just have in this really beautiful and challenging list that we've given ourselves, is a really different way to frame what we're trying to support teachers to do, right? Saying we're going to have teachers do discussion in their classroom, it stays kind of in a compliancy space, right? What we're thinking about here is these deeper shifts in what it means to be a teacher, what it means to teach, what it means to support kids to do math. Framing our goals that way helps us then design our systems better to support those goals. So here's what you're going to have a moment to do now. This can be on your own, or if you have a teammate here that you'd like to think about this with, you can we can help you into a breakout room. But here's what we're going to spend just 10 minutes doing some independent think time about your context for next year. So you're going to go ahead and drop in your context and then pick a goal or shift related to math that you want to support next year. It could be one of these ones. It could be something different. I put a note here. Do not get stuck here. The point is just to play with this a little bit today. You can go back and refine it, bring this to your bigger team back at home, figure out how to make it stronger. Just pick one to play with. And then what you're going to think about is, how does our current system as enacted this year, First Teacher Learning, have the potential to support that goal? Or how is our current system actually getting in the way of that goal? Take a moment to reflect on your current system. I did put a link. We did some really interesting thinking about this in March, if that's useful for you to go back and look at how our system can either impede or support the goals we have for teachers. That could be a useful tool. And then I'm going to encourage you, and again, we have 10 minutes, so just jot down some initial thinking in each of these columns. What changes, small or big, could you make that might make a difference towards that goal for next year? Okay, so we're going to take 10 minutes here of independent think time, or if you have a teammate and you'd love to jump in a breakout, just let us know and we can help you with that.
Allison, can I ask a clarifying question? When it says your
Please.
context, can you define what context means?
So that just means like your district or ISD, like where you're working.
What your role is? Okay.
Yep. Thanks for asking. We're gonna take 2 more minutes. If you haven't yet brainstormed what could we try differently, go ahead and just jot something down. It can be a half-baked idea. What could you do differently next year in your system that might support learning along the trajectory towards the shift you identify? Okay. It's okay if you're not done. We're going to embrace non-closure here. This was just starting to play with these ideas. What I would encourage you to do now, there's so many rich ideas here. Go ahead and scan through what our collective group thought about and brainstormed. And my challenge to you is can you leave one comment or emoji response? You can pick, but let's engage with each other's thinking here. The comment can be, oh, this is similar to us, or, oh, I would love to hear more about how you do this, or I'd like to try this too. Or an emoji can just show that you are vibing with the idea. All right. We're rounding in and towards the end of our time here. Are there things people notice as they looked across, or questions folks are having in this moment? I love the engagement in each other's ideas. I think there was a few comments in here around we need to support teachers to feel like this is what we do. To lift up a layer, I think what this space has potential to support us to do is also build a sense of this is what we do as leaders as we reflect on our systems and design them to more and more responsibly support teacher learning in these really complex ways. So I just want to lift up a little bit to say what we did today and why I think it's important. So we had this new routine today. We focused on supporting teachers, this goal of supporting teachers to engage their kids in discussions where kids are building off of each other's ideas and it's responsive to kids' ideas, right? You can do these same steps for any goal you have for teachers, whether it's in a different goal in math or a goal in literacy or related to classroom management. You could do these same steps for any goal you have for teachers. What we tend to do, oops, tell me if this feels familiar. We tend to just make a pretty surface level observation about where our teachers are. Like teachers aren't doing X. And then we just jump to number 6 and decide a change idea. That is typically what we do. Does that seem familiar to anyone? Can you give me like a nod or a thumbs up? Okay. That's typically what we do. We have a surface level number 3, and then we jump to a number 6. What I'm hoping you got a little bit of a taste of, not just today in all of our work, but today we were trying to kind of bring together a few different pieces of our work. What I'm hoping you're starting to think about is if we slow down just a little bit and really unpack the complexity of the learning we're trying to support, we can have a much better and deeper understanding of number 3, so that we can identify a much more rich goal or shift that we're trying to support them with that actually gets at the root of what we're seeing for teachers rather than the surface level of what we're seeing for teachers. I can't underemphasize the importance of number 5 before you move to number 6. What is our current system doing for this goal? And especially, are there ways in which our current system is getting in the way? Naming that is essential, because if we don't think about that piece and that piece just keeps going, then whatever good idea we have for number 6 is less likely to be effective, right? So an offering to you is this is a really lovely set of questions to move through with your local teams whenever you're identifying something you want to work on with teachers. This could honestly just be a little agenda structure for any meetings that you have that could help you slow down and think about what are we doing for teachers. I do want to talk about number 6. So we talked about at kind of a high level. We said like what changes, and we were thinking about next year, maybe big or small, could we make, right? If you are doing this on a more regular basis, here's the shift I might suggest. How will we leverage our system to support this goal over the next 4 touch points we have with teachers? Not just one thing, But what the next 4 things we're doing with them? How are we going to work towards this goal we have? So I just put in, these examples in this table. You could fill in 1, 2, 3, 4 with anything else, right? It could be any of the other pieces of your learning system you have. But notice if I'm thinking about supporting a teacher or a group of teachers towards a bigger shift, thinking about how am I going to leverage this one-on-one conversation I'm going to have with them in the hallway? How am I going to leverage the PLC we have next week? How am I then going to build towards that learning lab? And then what's the coaching I'm going to do afterwards, one-on-one? That's where we can support learning along the trajectory. Because none of these things individually does anything. I saw someone saying, I think learning labs are kind of feeling one-off right now, right? This is how we start to make learning labs not feel one-off by planning across the next, I made up 4, you could do 3 or 6. Do not just do one touch point and do not just have one kind of event in your system. Think across a few different events. What are we going to do over the next 4 to 6 weeks to support teachers with this goal we have? That's my offering. That's all we have time for today. It was so lovely to think with you. I'm going to turn it over to Jess.
Correct. Thank you, Allison, for that really rich routine to get us thinking about how to respond to teachers in our system. The Trish, Sonia, and I were having a lot of fun thinking about what this routine could look like, maybe in your leadership teams this upcoming month. Before we close out of here today, we just want to invite you / remind you one final time to join us at the Showcasing Impact and Innovation event on May 13th. Lunch will be served at 11:45. Our session will begin at 12:30, and this is all about the work that you all are doing in your local systems. We want to celebrate you and showcase this work to stakeholders that will be in our audience. So if you have any questions about this, you can feel free to reach out to myself or one of the early math team members. If there is a way that we can get you or your teachers there and you would appreciate a thought partner, we can do that as well. We're really excited to celebrate this work with you all. Trish, Sonia, anything you would add to that?
Just add a little bit of urgency to get registered because we're sending over a print order for the yearbooks. Tomorrow is like we're finalizing those details. It's not to say there wouldn't be a digital access available, but knowing who's going to be there from particular sites is really going to help our team be prepared for that date.
So please get registered, nudge. Thank you all for joining us today. Allison, thank you for that rich learning around a new routine. We appreciate you all, and we will talk to you soon. Have an awesome rest of your Thursday.